These two guys have a wealth of information, so I'm just going to bring them up to the stage. This is interactive, so I will be around. I will have a microphone. They want to hear from you guys as much as share their knowledge with you. So guys, please come to the stage. Their full bios are in the app, and they'll give a short introduction to themselves, but let's get into this exciting interactive session.
Good to see everyone again. It's always good to be in Vegas, according to my team. And don't mind the guy with the camera. We film a lot and share a lot on YouTube. And actually Josh the same, 2 cameras. Hi guys. But my team always says I'm a lot happier person when I'm in Vegas. So it's gonna be a good day. As far as introductions, more introductions. Josh, I'll let you take it away.
Yes, we thought we'd just do a little bit more like, kind of common words here. I don't know, Dan dubbed me the CPG Whisperer. I didn't give myself that nickname at all. So, from the Rust Belt, I'm big on strategy and process, and regardless of me working primarily in like better for you, healthier for you sections, I eat a half gallon of ice cream a week on average. I have been doing that my whole adult life, so don't know how that works, but it doesn't really go to the belly area.
Awesome. But as Steve said, my name is Daniel Lourenço. I'm the CEO and founder of Ghost. Prior to Ghost, I was with now one of the largest sports nutrition brands in the space. I was with them for a lot of years of tremendous growth from 2010 to 2015. And before that, I was actually a jet pilot. Why is this relevant? Well, at my core, I'm a super user and core user of the market. And then I started my own company in 2016, and prior to that I was part of this rapidly growing now and mass market company. I like to think that I've gotten to see and been very blessed to see growth in this market, in this industry, at a lot of different growth stages. It's given me, I think, a pretty unique perspective. And although I've been told a magician never shares their tricks or secrets, I am here to do some of that with you today. So as far as how the day is going to go, or how we'd love it to go, any questions, comments, if you agree or disagree or whatever, we'd love to kind of have that conversation. To me, what's fun about this industry more than a lot of others is it's a high emotion, highly shareable, highly community driven industry at its core, especially sports nutrition. Encouraging conversation, I think, is what it's all about.
So we thought it'd be fun just to kind of run through some headlines here. Obviously, there's been a lot that's went on over the last 12 months since we've been on stage before. So first one here is just around like the Amazon effect on dietary supplements. It seems like anytime you have any conversations around supplements, sports nutrition, Amazon always seems to come within the first couple of sentences after that. And then you have kind of GNC, a few headlines that they had specifically. First one around their big investment from a Chinese pharmaceutical company, Harbin. They also announced that they were closing a ton of stores, I think at this point well over 1,000 stores. They then on their main competitor, Vitamin Shoppe, they also are closing stores, and they actually just had been announced that they got acquired by a company called Liberty Tax, which is going to go through a different kind of name change over to the franchise group, so it's going to make a little bit more sense in the future. And then outside of just like the retail world, we also had a lot of things that went on, obviously, from just like the brand side. So we had Quest Nutrition, which was one of those really big acquisitions. There was a billions with one of those acquisitions, so it's a proud moment for anybody in this room that somebody that got fostered in more of the sports nutrition supplement space came out and got acquired for $1 billion. And then we also had Hershey's that just kind of purchased One Brands, which makes the One Bar, and also Hershey's made an investment in Fulfill, which is an Irish-based protein snack company. And then we also had PepsiCo that was active in the market as well. So you have big CPG companies looking at better for you, healthier for you as a major kind of acquisition target. It's where a lot of the growth is. They're in very legacy, traditional categories, which they're staring at very grim growth over the next so many periods. So they're looking to tap into our area, which is very high growth. It's been high growth now for the last decade, very recession-proof in terms of the last recession. Hopefully, if anything happens in the future, it's going to continue to be recession-proof over this next one. So a lot of these CPG companies are looking to tap that. So you had PepsiCo that made a few investments, you had Mondelez that made a few investments, and one of like the most interesting ones that just happened about a couple weeks ago was Canopy Growth, a marijuana company based in Canada, actually made a majority stake purchase of BioSteel sports nutrition. So you have now marijuana companies now looking at sports nutrition companies as a viable option for product development and just kind of going through that period of just inflection of where there's this kind of new category, new ingredient that's available, not technically legal right now, but will hopefully be in the future for food additives, beverage additives, and supplements. So you kind of have a broad base of things that have happened over the last year.
I've been told that they're big hockey fans too.
They are big hockey fans, yeah. So marketplace has changed, and one of the things that we kind of come up with, a funny thing we said, like, your mom uses pre-workout, or in my terms, I said, the thing that flipped on my brain was about 4 or 5 years ago when I was in airports constantly, I started to see grandmas, older aged women, eating Quest bars in the airport. It was just kind of one of those common things, and I thought, like, this is crazy. How is this happening? Like, the bars that I used to eat in maybe college or whatever, that people would look at me and say, this is weird that you're carrying around a protein bar 10 years ago, now is getting consumed by all ages, all demographics, all buyer groups. And you essentially have stripped away like this bro mentality, gym rat mentality of the buyers. And now you're having all kinds of other buyer groups that are getting into this, being very interested to purchase products because they are looking to get healthier for themselves, or they're trying to replace foods that were traditionally maybe not all that good for themselves, now are better for them. And it's kind of this continuation and maturity of the category as a whole.
Yeah, and internally at Ghost, your mom drinks Ghost, your mom drinks pre-workout. Although we did actually make that sticker and it sold out in like 5 minutes on Mother's Day last year. For us, that's really kind of our fun way of saying the market's broadened, right? As Josh said, it's not just kind of the super users, right, or the weekend warriors or the elite athletes purchasing these products anymore. It's mom, it's grandma, it's your little brother, it's your friend down the street, it's the guy who's playing hockey once a week. That's like the core market, and something that's driven, and something we spoke about last year as far as how innovations in the industry's changed. You know, you've gone from kind of this faux science claims intensive business to, at least at Ghost, one thing that we kind of our mantra internally is to formulate for the 1% that actually understand it. Right. And build the brand and the story and the messaging for the other 99%. And I think that balancing act is really critical in today's world to attack all of this. And Grandma does need to be careful with the Quest bars that are maybe a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes they get a little too
hard.
So if she wears dentures, don't do that. Something you guys hear about a lot, retail is, I don't know about if it's dying. It's definitely changing. So you hear the...
Die changing.
Die changing.
Die changing.
So you have like this retail apocalypse that is being the term that gets used around a ton. There is a definite restriction or just like limiting or lessening of stores that are needed now. So you're seeing these headlines that come up there, and you're seeing a lot of people that are kind of spinning that in a very negative way, but it's actually quite positive in terms of having to close some of those locations, because you don't need as many of those very high rent, high cost type stores to service the same amount of people, especially with the omni-channel, more that digital side that's kind of coming in there. So the way that everybody is buying supplements today is changing. It's not necessarily just these specialty retailers that you had to always go down. And joke that we were kind of making was around like, Alexa, like find the nearest GNC location. And, if you guys have an Alexa speaker at home, you guys know she always says like, sorry, I don't know that one. Like, it's just one of those things. So it's not a joke on GNC at all. I think that definitely they are doing what they need to do to make their business stronger and make their business, be around for much longer, but I think it's important for everybody to know that as a channel perspective, things are definitely changing, and physical retail might not seem as attractive as it used to be, but it needs to be thought about in a different way, and it's just as attractive if you make sure that you can look at those challenges and present opportunities through the right lens.
Yeah, something people often find really curious about Ghost is for a brand maybe as young as we are, as digitally savvy, or kind of, I guess, as forward thinking, just different, right? That we're actually partnered with GNC exclusively in the US. We're in all 4,500 stores, and then we sell direct on our website, ghostlights.com. We don't sell on Amazon at all, right? That's kind of the anti-millennial thing to do, right? Is to not sell on Amazon. And I think that, in talking through some of this next slide, the wal-mazon is a term that I definitely need to trademark or copyright or whatever one of these days. But as we've seen over the past few years, brands, a lot of my peers or competitors, what have you, transition from selling in GNC and Vitamin Shop and independent retail only to go chase the big bucks, right? And sell in Costco and sell in Walmart, Sam's Club, Amazon, and beyond. What effect does that have? And I think that from the perspective of the retailer, you're seeing maybe that lost kind of hook, right? What's going to bring a customer into your store if they can now buy your product sitting at home, bundled with your toilet paper, Amazon Prime, it's there next day. Why would they ever come into the store? And I think that's a real question that people have to exist. From the brand side, what effect does that ability have, or what is that perception, right? What effect does it have on the consumer perception of your brand? For me, again, as that super user, I've always thought that maybe selling in some of those channels could have that effect of like your favorite song is now on the radio, right? Like, oh, this brand, this thing that I thought was really cool and really edgy, well, now it's available at Walmart. Does it still have that sizzle? I'm a big sneaker guy, and I always joke when I'm asked about Amazon or some of these channels. I say, well, when Nike starts selling their latest and greatest in these channels, then I will too. And that's just my perspective. I think you have actually a slightly different perspective here, which I think is kind of cool.
No, I definitely think that, to give Ghost credit, is definitely they think a lot more long term, and I think that you have issues with marketplaces specifically, that you have a very self-directed consumer that buys products, and they're giving up tens of millions of dollars a year by not being on Amazon or not having their products on a Walmart marketplace. But they are more worried about building a brand experience, more worried about how the customer feels when they buy that product. And if they're shopping on an Amazon, they might get that product more efficiently for them in the way that they maybe wanted at that time, but it's maybe not the customer that Ghost wants in the short term. So they're willing to kind of give that up for selling more of an exclusive type of experience. And we'll cover a lot more about what actually an exclusive experience is. But there is a lot of short-term thinking, unfortunately, in the industry, and that's mostly because of fear. It comes down to a lot of people are seeing this change and they're saying, what do we do next? And they're trying to replace some of this legacy business that they've had for 10 or 20 years at a GNC or at a vitamin shop, and they're saying, where do we fill this bucket at? How do we make this revenue up again? And where they're defaulting to, where the easiest default has been, is where the consumer or the customer is at. There's a lot of customers that are going to Amazon. It's easy for you to kind of manipulate them into your listings, and that's how they're able to short-term replace revenue. But long-term, it kind of leaves them to this point where they're going to be constantly kind of struggling. They're not going to be able to compete with somebody like Ghost that's thinking more long-term, thinking more brand. So it's kind of disappointing here. I definitely.
Well, that remains to be seen too.
Yeah.
I think it's a balancing act, right? There always has to be a balancing act of short-term thinking and short-term success and need revenue now, cash is king, okay? And then long-term thinking of how do I build a brand and what runway have I left myself? And that's just, again, it's an open conversation, which is kind of cool to see how it evolves, and we'll call you after the game and let you know who's right.
Now, I'm kind of all over in terms of my consulting. I do a bunch of different stakeholders, from retail to brands to sometimes contract manufacturers, raw material manufacturers, but also from a bunch of different industries. And one of the ones that I focus a lot on is grocery. So one of the big things that have been driving that, and it's obviously carrying over to our space, it carries over everywhere, is this idea of friend or foe, that retailers and brands are now acting very similar to each other. It's very hard to understand who's a retailer and who's a brand. And let me explain a little bit, because retailers at this point are launching brands. They're launching private label. They're understanding that we need to create private labels to create kind of unique products that can't be really sold anywhere else. It brings people in, especially if they have a high equity brand, retail brand, that they can sell very high quality products around. So you're having these retailers that are now creating brands. Now on the flip side, you have brands that are obviously opening direct to consumer. They're really focusing a lot of their attention on direct to consumer, so they're acting as a retailer. They're vertically integrated to being a retailer at this point. So you have both of these brands and retailers acting as each other, and then you have Amazon, which we just kind of talked about. They are now launching lookalike brands. They're launching a ton of private label brands. They are working with contract manufacturers. They're working with end brands. They're working anywhere they can to kind of get as much of the market as possible. So who do you trust? Like, who do you end up like having to have your back? And it's a matter of, for me as a consultant, it's always around like understanding what is, you know, kind of a bunch of different variables and what's the goals involved with the businesses I'm working with. But I think, you know, somebody like Ghost has a different answer than somebody else, but it's a matter of making sure that you are always kind of keeping your friends close, or, you know, keep your enemies closer type of a situation, making sure that you understand what the actual market is doing, because no longer can you just trust that long-standing retailer. Or if you're a retailer in this room, you can't always think, hey, that exclusive brand's going to be with me for the rest of my, you know, next 5 years. You just don't know. You have to kind of always kind of hedge your bets, I guess, in a way, and make sure that you're always kind of paying attention to the chessboard, because everybody's moving in different directions. You got to make sure that you're always covering your butt.
Well, if you build your brand, you build demand. And I think that in this changing, and kind of our goal with this part of this part of our presentation is to paint a picture of the status quo, right? The state of the union of the market today. There's a lot going on, whether it's the headlines plastered all over there, or this kind of shifting retail landscape, where retailers are now competing with their vendors and all that. We kind of want to paint that picture, and then we'll get into the kind of solutions in the second part here. It's a big shift. When I started doing business with GNC back in 2010, GNC was known for really selling a lot of fish oil and vitamins and proteins. And as a sports nutrition brand, you really wouldn't dare, or there wasn't like a value prop for you to kind of bring any of those items to GNC. Well, let's fast forward to 2019, 2020. GNC, the number one selling pre-workout in there by a mile, right, is GNC's own brand of Beyond Raw. And they've done a phenomenal job with the product, honestly, right? It's a great formula, open label. There's a lot of things to like, innovative flavors here and there. There's a lot of things to like, but as a brand, you kind of have to think about that a little bit, right? Say, okay, well, my biggest customer is also one of my biggest competitors in the store. What can I do? And I think that, you know, we'll talk about some of that in the second half, but again, it's that focus on building the brand, and the reason why those investments in building your own demand, no matter where you sell, leave yourself options, right?
So one of the things in the headlines that we didn't really cover was around maybe some closures or things you've seen in terms of like actual legacy end consumer brands. You're seeing a lot of them maybe close up, some of them disappear, and not know where the owner is at, or any of those types of things. So you have a lot of things that are happening from like a legacy brand standpoint. And to us, it's kind of the sense, legacy brands are kind of in a tough position, because they've built their business on pre-existing models. They've built their business on how the world used to operate. And in today's market, you have brands that are moving at like a breakneck speed. You have manufacturers that are meeting the needs for what they call more like the long tail brands, where you have a lot of people that are trying to get minimum order quantities really low, because they're only selling either direct to consumer or through Amazon. They know their demand drivers, they know their sales drivers, they know when they're going to pull those levers, so they don't necessarily need to stock hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of stores, so they don't need to carry a lot of products. And then you have this low barriers of entry that are coming from, one, the manufacturing side, which I talked about, but also just instantaneously, if you want to start a brand, you can fire up Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever else you want to kind of launch. That is your marketing across the world instantaneously. Then you have, Shopify, that with a few clicks of your mouse, you can instantly create a website. You are now distributing your product domestically, or if you want to kind of cross over internationally, you can kind of go across all those boards. So within a few seconds, you can start up your business, start going. You have a manufacturer that has very small lead times, low barriers of entry. They're able to innovate and create products for you within 4 to 6 weeks. And you don't have to worry about gatekeepers. You don't have to worry about retail buyers that are saying, hey, we'll put you in the next reset in 2020 or whatever that is. You are quickly just launching things before those legacy brands even had the time to actually just put it all on paper to actually, put it to market. So you have this issue where legacy brands are now struggling because there's a bunch of cost layers, there's a bunch of things that are going on that they can't sustain any longer by competing with these smaller brands. And it's just creating this kind of Jurassic Park Land Before Time type of thing. We all know what happened to the dinosaurs. It just kind of, over time, they end up dying.
Yeah, does anyone here follow like Stack 3D or Price Plow or Fitness Inform, any of those guys? I mean, my God, if you have your notifications on your computer, it's like every 5 seconds there's a new brand, a new product, a new something, right? And that's a big change. It's funny. Ghost does a lot of work with some of the big CPG brands like Mondelez, and their minds are blown with kind of how quickly our industry moves compared to food. As Josh said, there's no resets. You form a Shopify site, you start an Instagram account, boom, you're selling, you're out there, you're speaking to the world. I don't know about any of you, but I also get targeted a lot now and sometimes comment back not so nicely on some of the contract manufacturer kind of Facebook ads that are targeting, saying it's easier than ever to start a supplement business. Minimum order quantities as low as 100 units. I mean, I'll reserve my thoughts on if that's good or bad for the industry. It's pretty obvious. For later, but I mean now I guess there's this kind of perception that it's really easy to get in this business and really easy to do it. And that's just completely changed the competitive landscape, and I think that a lot of the legacy brands have clearly, with some of the closings and some of the things that have happened this year, have struggled to kind of know what to do with that.
So we've touched a little bit on some of these ideas, but just this idea that product development as a whole has changed a ton. Categories in which I guess is considered sports nutrition or considered nutritional supplements, what's in our kind of arms, like length, it's spread out. There's no more like silos. There's no more, natural this or, everything is kind of blended together. Beauty, personal care, all kinds of different CPG categories have kind of put together into more like functional, better for you, healthier for you. And within sports nutrition specifically, you're seeing a lot around kind of functional foods and functional beverages. And one of the kind of most iconic sayings from one of the most iconic guys in our industry, Jack Owack. If you ain't banging, you ain't hanging. It's one of those things where like energy drinks have become such a big part of the industry. You have this idea that convenience is everything. You have convenience is king. Millennials, both myself and Dan, we're dubbed the convenience generation. We're always kind of trading out maybe more kind of cost-effective ways to supplement our products into energy drinks. You used to have pre-workouts, or you had fat burner powders or something like that. Now you're just grabbing a bang before you go into your workout, or you're grabbing a bar post-workout. It's no longer just like something that was maybe convenient from a standpoint of maybe your schedule, but it's just like convenient to like how can you integrate these products into your lifestyle. That's more convenient. Kind of more inclusive convenience, not necessarily just convenience in terms of maybe just product format being in like, a can or being in a wrapper or something like that. But, we talked a little bit around like the idea of like newness or like a calendar of excitement where there's like so many different launches. There's so many maybe seasonal aspects of different things. You have so many different elements of product launches that are no longer just, maybe around the Arnold, around the Olympia, or something like that. You're having constant kind of iterations or flavors or different things like that. And one of the things that you'll see a lot of people talking about is that marketing companies, like, is it just marketing companies in our industry at this point, or is there really science going on? And it has to be kind of a blending of both to be successful, but marketing is more important than ever. There's a reason why Dan and myself both have cameras going at this time. We are capturing content for our channels or for the stuff that we're doing. We realize that there's an element of like just one-to-one type of kind of telling people what's going on, but there's also an element of just, you have to play the game of social media, you have to play all of these different things out here. So marketing is a big part of it, but there's also a lot of like secret sauce or science behind both of our businesses that we like to share, but we also know that's integral to our business. It's not just some hype machine, marketing machine.
Let's tell people what to do about it. Does anyone remember Good Idea, Bad Idea? No? One of the best of all time. I wonder if we can hear this. No sound? No sound. Well, anyways, Good Idea, Bad Idea was basically a cartoon, what, 90s? Probably? Yeah. 90s cartoon of like a good situation followed by a bad situation. And I think that's kind of our approach for making some recommendations and maybe presenting some solutions to kind of this mosh pit of factors going on, I think, in the industry. So one big shift that we've seen, right, in years past, it was always like USA focused. Well, now, in the age of social media we talked about and the age of Shopify stores, one of the biggest challenges I personally have at Ghost is the second we launch something, like today, we're actually, tomorrow, we're restocking a huge collaboration we did with Chips Ahoy flavored authentically protein, right? Amazing. Well, not if you live in Australia or not if you live in Europe, because that partnership right now is limited to North America only. And I can't control that message. The second I want to tell the world, all of our customers here in the States, hey, this is back in stock, everybody in Australia sees that too. Everybody in Europe sees that too, and they want it now. So it's really, from a recommendation standpoint, solution standpoint, you have to think global from day one. That kind of, we'll get to it later. It's harder. The formulas are different. You have to really, I think the successful brands now have to think about how to solve for the global marketplace.
Another kind of concept and things in terms of distribution, one of the things that was big around the industry for the longest time was this idea of like shotgun distribution, or stack it high and watch it fly type of situation, where you're just kind of spraying it out there and hopefully you're getting a bunch of sales from it. Hopefully it's building your brand, but you don't really know if it is or not. You can't really control anything. You're just kind of saying, hey, the most doors that I can get into, better. I'm not really worried about the story that's getting told in those doors, but I'm just, hopefully we can get a bunch of sales through distribution. I don't need to control anything or anything. Now you have more of this context of actually controlling your distribution. So in Dan's case, their distribution is, we're talking US based here, is that it's going to be direct to consumer, it's going to be GNC. That's it. That's all that they have. So they're able to tell that story the way they want to through the merchandising at GNC and through the way that they present themselves on direct to consumer, and then a matter of like their marketing and things of that nature. So it's very controlled. And in another case of a lot of other brands, it's also, you're picking and choosing. I like to make a lot of references to Nike with clients, and they're really big on right now, like controlling a lot of their distribution. They're really picking partners based around, how is that partner going to help my brand long term? How is it going to ultimately feed our flywheel long term? Because if it's not going to, it's not worth those short-term sales. So you need to really control your brand, and if you do control your brand, you ultimately control your future. If you're not able to control your brand, you're just kind of letting it go out and the telephone game starts to happen, you effectively no longer control your own brand. You no longer control your own destiny. Somebody else is controlling it for you. You're just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, if you think about some of the issues that brands traditionally have with distribution, right? MAP pricing, right, comes instantly to mind, and oh my gosh, how do I enforce MAP? And this guy hasn't listed for this, and this website wants to compete. Well, if you kind of control and work very closely with who that B2B customer is, then you kind of eliminate that. Like, we at Ghost doesn't have that problem at all, because you can't buy us really wholesale anywhere unless we're working with you kind of directly. So controlling distribution, you kind of avoid some of the traditional issues that brands face. I really appreciated personally the last presentation on transparency. I completely agree. This is one of the best things, or best trends. The fact that we've been able to make kind of full disclosure and full efficacy in a lot of cases, sexy and cool again. I think that's really healthy for the end consumer. So obviously, proprietary blends is kind of there's a lot of heritage in the industry for that. A big thing that hopefully was a big takeaway of mine last year, right, was innovation is a big thing. My mantra kind of internally. Well, if in a world of full disclosure supplements, your formulas on the side of the bottle, to kind of go to the market and say, hey, my point of differentiation is my formula. I'm more innovative than you. You've got 4 grams of citrulline, I've got 5. Hi. Well, formulas on the side of the bottle, that can change overnight, right? So you have to really think about some of these other ways to be innovative. So although transparency is a great thing, it does force brands to kind of think about, I think, the market a little bit different. This one, I think, is pretty near and dear to my heart, but for a long time, obviously, the heritage of this industry, and it still amazes me when I see new brands launch chocolate and vanilla. We've come a long way since that, thank God. And then from there's kind of the next iteration was you saw brands kind of knocking off, I think, a lot of flavors, where instead of it being an actual Skittles partnership, it was Skittles with D's, and I think I even saw an ad that said "Taste the Gains, bro," instead of "Taste the Rainbow." I thank God we've kind of evolved from that, and hopefully that's something that we've really tried to do. Ghost is really, we've tried to do our part in bringing authentic brands to the marketplace for the first time. With partnership with Warheads that launched in 2016, Sour Patch Kids, Swedish Fish, Welch's Grape, Sonic Cherry Limeade, Chips Ahoy, and so on and so forth. We've really tried to kind of legitimize the industry. Even if licensing and that kind of mountain seems like a big challenge, I think that there's a lot of success to be had just in being a little bit more innovative with flavoring. I think you've seen a big trend in recent years of cereal flavors coming to market. You've seen more regional desserts. I've seen like horchata coming out, and you've seen the donut or breakfast series and maple bacon even now. So people are having more fun with flavors. There's authentic flavors now, and I think that all of this is good for, again, broadening the marketplace.
Now, the idea of the industry, I should kind of stop a little bit and say that I come from undergrad as accounting, and I have my MBA in finance, so I'm all about high margin. I'm all about making money. That is how everybody kind of sustains this industry and everything. But there's been a shift that's happened around pricing and competition, saturation in the market that has driven down a lot of things and it's created a lot of problems in that high margin business that's been around for the longest time. And the brands that have been able to sustain a kind of that price point that's a little bit higher, that they haven't really faced a lot of that pressure, is because they're adding a ton of value to the system. They're adding a ton of value to the customers. They're willing to do a lot of the things that they know might not necessarily be great for the accounting team, because they're going to argue that there's cheaper ways to do it. But they're saying, hey, this is what is ultimately going to win long term. We need to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to create high value for our customers. So you see things naturally happening in the market, and a lot of that margin that used to be there is being kind of replaced because the middleman's gone. You no longer have to work a lot of times with retailers if you don't want to. Distributors you definitely don't need to work with if you don't want to. There's a lot of those things where now you can go direct to the consumer. You can go cut out some of those things to help you add more value, add more transparency, full disclosed, efficacious dosed products, whatever it is that you want to do to make sure that you can also sustain the margin you need to compete in the market long term. But you need to make sure that you are doing what you need to do to position your company for high value, because that's going to be where you win long term. It's no longer just trying to scrape as much money out of the customer's pocket to put into your pocket. It's a matter of how much value are you giving to that customer, and will they want to continue to buy from you long term?
Yeah, I think that my perspective on this as a brand owner in the current marketplace is actually pretty interesting. I believe that the industry now needs to trade and does trade at a lower margin than in years past. Unfortunately, 27 to 2012 or 13, those were years of big margin and the glory days, as I like to call it, because everything that we've talked about today, from the flavors to fully efficacious formulas and transparent dosing, all those things cost money. And what's been kind of fascinating is price points in the industry have reasonably stayed fixed, right? A pre-workout, give or take, depending on what it is around $40. It was $40 5 years ago. But now the formulas are, the scoop size has gone from maybe a 5-6 gram scoop to a 15 or 20 gram scoop, right? So I think that, it's an interesting thing to kind of zoom out and step back and say, hey, when you're looking at the business today to be successful, what's it going to take? And in my opinion, there's definitely some margin nutrition that's happening, and it's something that is a good trade-off that brands and the entire supply chain kind of need to think about in order to deliver max value to the consumer to continue to be successful in the market today.
In terms of like advertising and marketing, things have obviously changed a ton. The industry was really based around traditional advertising, and not to pick on print or anything, but that was the major driver for the longest time, was around centerfolds or this like faux science type of advertorial type of a situation where you had a bunch of things in there to try to. A lot of people were reading magazines, and that's how they were consuming their information. So that was where you obviously wanted to market, or you wanted to advertise. They wanted to make sure that you saw those really cool advertorials. That was kind of the shining light that you would go to a retailer's meeting and you'd show them all the pages in your magazine and all those different things. And then now you have digital marketing, which is 24/7, 365. It's constantly changing. It's constantly, the communication and the community is always talking about your brand, and you need to be constantly kind of being involved with that. The more that you're involved with the community through digital marketing, through social media, through whatever it is, the conversation, you need to kind of continue with it, because that is going to take on a life of its own. And if you're able to kind of grab it and foster it, your brand will grow immensely. But if you're not really focusing on that 24/7 data aspect of digital marketing, social media, and not providing, I guess, all that you can to that new kind of way to get customers, you're not going to be able to essentially stick around very longer, because they're going to just move on to the next thing.
And what's interesting about this too, whether you are on the brand side or the retailer side or an ingredient vendor side, it's amazing how many conversations I have about marketing, and ingredient vendors or organizations want to talk about what they're doing in this publication or this print magazine or this trade show, or they're going to feature us in this banner, and it's amazing because clearly people still don't get it. In today's market, and it's called digital marketing, social media. Yes, it's marketing. But what I challenge people to think of is, instead of using social media as an advertising platform, use it as a tool to create more conversations. Every time I talk to an ingredient manufacturer or vendor, I say, hey, let me handle the marketing, let me go out there and create conversations on social media. We've built a really strong community. Our Ghost family, our ambassador team, everyone's going to be talking about this ingredient. What do I need from you? I need to make sure that, when a customer spins the bottle on the back and they see the ingredient on there, fully transparent, dose in its full efficacious study dose, that when they put it into Google, they're going to see great quality content. And when they look on Facebook or where people or Instagram and see what people are saying about this ingredient or product or retailer or whatever it is, right? That the conversation, there is conversation going on, and B, that conversation is positive. That is the most important thing, I think, with marketing today. It's a lot less about selling and a lot more about conversation and community. Kind of tied to that, the athlete spokesmodel, that whole thing, my gosh, it's changed a lot. Not to take anything away from the achievements of the Mr. and Mrs. Olympias of the world or the professional athletes, but it's a new world, right? Back in the day, let's say 10, 15, whatever years ago, a customer or fan would really see their athlete their favorite athlete either in the pages of a magazine, or they'd see them on stage, maybe or an event once or twice a year. Nowadays, the people that these super users turned influencers, okay, the folks out there who have basically self-imposed a Truman Show on themselves, and they eat breakfast and go to the gym and take supplements and do everything else in front of the whole world on YouTube. If they go missing, if they don't post a video for a day or don't make an update, I mean, their fans are calling the cops to say, hey, this, what's going on here, right? APB. It's a lot different. The camera is always on, and again, it goes back to that conversation and community. And I think that some of the old school thinking of having this athlete or that athlete kind of pose with the bottle in a magazine, talk about it 1 or 2 days a year, that just doesn't work anymore.
We talked a lot, myself and Dan, recently around just like degrees of separation, and Super users or influencers, be that micro or even larger, that are social influencers, tend to have a much closer relationship with the audience that they have because they are investing a ton of time in their story. They're presenting themselves in very authentic ways, sometimes very vulnerable ways, and that creates a lot of people that relate to that. And when somebody goes out and says, hey, buy this product, or hey, try this restaurant, or whatever that is, you tend to think of them as your friend more than just some celebrity or anything like that. So you tend to believe in them a lot more. And with the power of reviews and the power of influencers and the power of just kind of getting as close as you can to like one-to-one type of commerce is where this all shines. I know a lot of people I've talked to over the last several years have always kind of thrown shade towards social influencers or YouTubers or anything like that because they say, well, what kind of trophies do they have? Like, what, their physique isn't that impressive, or whatever it is, but it's the wrong way to think about it. It's closed-minded. It's kind of like a limiting mindset because they don't realize the true power of these individuals. It's a matter of getting as close as you can to like scale the unscalable of that one-to-one friend type of recommendation. If I tell Dan where he should eat tonight, me and him have been friends for a while, he's going to say, great, I'd love to. He doesn't need to go and check a bunch of reviews. He doesn't have to check anything because he knows that. But that's very hard for me to go around the whole room and tell each person about what they should eat tonight. But if I am a influencer, you guys have all followed me for years, you guys trust me, and I tell you guys through my lens, my social media, you guys, a good selection of you guys are going to be interested in what I just said and probably either buy what I just said or go to that restaurant. So it's just kind of, honestly, it's one of those things where a lot of the things that we presented here in terms of like good idea, bad idea, can be, you might be on the legacy side, the old school way of thinking. You might think all that we just presented on the other side is super challenging. You don't know how to wrap your head around those things. You're not understanding how are you going to be effectively doing these things because they seem so far removed from what you do on a day-to-day basis. But those types of challenges, if you think about them in the right framework, you think about them in the right lens, they become immense opportunities. You just have to think about how do you utilize what's in front of you the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a great way to kind of summarize it. I mean, here's kind of just all the kind of the new, or what we're calling the good idea kind of things that we talked about, right? Think globally, control your distribution, right? To maximize kind of your value, transparent labels and flavors, right? Obviously, the pricing and the margin, again, looks like the industry is trading a little bit lower because of where'd the costs go? Into the product. Using social media as a platform to communicate and have great conversations and create a community around your brand or product or ingredient or store, and working with super users of the product. I think one thing to add to kind of our comments there is the network size often doesn't matter. Sometimes the most influential kind of super users you can work with are the people with 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000 followers. It doesn't have to be the millions of followers. Sometimes those people have a little bit less credibility because the network is so broad and they don't have that one-to-one relationship or perceived relationship with their audience. So those are, I think, some of our recommendations. I think we had to sum up a little bit of kind of where the industry was. And I guess with that, if there's any kind of questions or comments or anything, we'd love to open it up.
As far as digital marketing and social media, as far as digital marketing and social media, do you think that the sports nutrition industry is ahead of others, like beauty and personal care,
Sure.
or food specifically?
I think it's only a matter of time, and some of this is happening now, but it's only been a matter of time until some of the bigger, like CPG, like the teeth whitening or makeup or now the Fashion Novas of the world popping up, really kind of driving a lot of their excitement or e-commerce, through social media. But as far as that next layer, I think it's already starting to happen, that you're going to start to see your McDonald's of the world start to market not only on social media but via influencers. I think you're seeing some of that now.
Yeah, no, I echo a lot of what Dan said. I mean, I think they're categorically CPG-wise. I mean, I think that probably beauty is probably the most furthest along in terms of like their influencer, their use of the digital or social channels. I think that sports nutrition is probably up there in the top 3 or so because a lot of times Instagram specifically kind of drove a lot of like body image, or just the idea of like being able to show the hard work in the gym in a way to monetize it. And I think that, you know, sex is always sold for the longest time, and if you're able to sell it in a new package of more of like the Instagram size, it's going to be wherever those industries that could kind of get in there. So beauty is another one that obviously is around sometimes, you know, sex or just appearance-wise. So you're going to see a lot of those, but food and beverage as well. I think because everybody for the longest time have posted pictures of what they're eating or what they're drinking, and that's just going to kind of continue. But a lot of like the bigger companies haven't went into that space yet, because they're still focused on trying to cast the biggest net over going as deep as possible. But I think that's changing. To Dan's point, even I saw recently like McDonald's did do a lot of campaigns around some of their micro-influencers, around like food influencers, specifically around some of their collaborations with Uber Eats or DoorDash or something like that. So I think it's just starting. I think though social influencers and just the idea of influencers seem to be kind of everywhere, it kind of seems very saturated. I think that one of the biggest points that I always kind of bring up to clients is that if you look at grade school kids at this point and you ask them, like, what do they want to be when they get older, their number one answer is YouTuber or social influencer. It's not doctor, it's not baseball player, it's not whatever. So if you think about in the next 10, 15 years when all of them age out to an adult, they're going to be thinking about Generation Z. That individuals will be thinking about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. How are they going to be a voice that can monetize themselves? So influencing is going to be just, to me, I think it's just getting started. It's still early innings.
And as soon as some of the bigger brands come in, the cost, right, of digital media is going to skyrocket. So definitely, I'd say, especially for this industry, and I think you're seeing the industries that have loyal communities around it, right? Fitness and active lifestyle has always been a very social, shareable thing. There's a community there. It's kind of easy to find it online and social. So I think like for people in this category, the time is definitely now. Get your money in and figure out the best strategies to start doing that, because as soon as Josh said, and the big boys come in, it's going to get more expensive for everyone.
Any other questions?
This goes back to your This goes back to your approach of creating formulas for a global market. Obviously, in Australia, a lot of the unique flavors that you have, you won't see. For the reasons being, does that mean you use a contract manufacturer in Australia for your formulas, or do you ship them over?
So I think there's two parts to that question. So we export to Australia, right now, and actually the Australian market is one of our top global markets. And it's a market very near and dear to me too. So we've got a lot of really close friends down there. The Stafford brothers, Burke Evers, they're all kind of big ambassadors for us. What I was talking about before with regards to licensed flavors, if you're, for example, Sonic, right? They're a great partner of ours for cherry limeade flavor. Sonic restaurants are only here in the States. And sometimes some of these big brands struggle with the idea of, an Aussie there down in Sydney who's never had Sonic. They don't know what the heck Sonic is. Their first introduction to the Sonic brand will be via a partner in Ghost, right? Nothing against us, but if you're Sonic, you probably want that person's first Sonic experience to be at a drive-in sipping a cherry limeade. So that's kind of a conversation that we've had with all of our partners on a global scale. Some of them have been a lot more, hands-off or a lot more kind of, let's say, just gung-ho, like Warheads. It's like, yeah, we don't have a huge presence in Australia, but like, people see it online, and even if they don't know Warheads, they want the Ghost Warheads product because their friends using it, their favorite influencers using it, they saw our social channel, whatever it is. So we're able to actually, as a partner, create some of that demand for that brand, even in a market that they're not. But sometimes, and I completely understand why, sometimes that brand wants the initial experience or introduction to be via the real thing.
So I have a couple questions. The first one was, we talked about transparency in the industry and sports nutrition. There's still brands that are still lying about their supplements out there. So I'm just wondering, how do you kind of mitigate that? How do you kind of talk about the benefits of your products without kind of disowning these other brands?
I think the simple answer to that is to lead by example. Right? I mean, all we can do is talk about, fully disclose all of our products, only dose in the correct, efficacious amounts. Again, my belief is that only 1% of consumers really know what ingredients they're looking for, what the benefits are going to be. They're looking to Ghost to kind of deliver that comprehensive, they're looking to a lot of brands to deliver that comprehensive experience. I always tell people that I own more pairs of Nikes than I'm ready to admit. And I can't actually tell you how the technology of the Air Max or the Air Bubble, I don't actually know. But I like the brand, I like the performance, the comfort level, right? I like the style, so I buy. I think a lot of people approach supplements the same way. So our commitment there, I think the commitment that a lot of brands are making now is to say, hey, we're going to lead by example and dose things and display things, in the right way. And that's really all you can do. I think if you're pedal to the metal, growing your brand and doing the right thing, that you have to hope that that's going to win out, I think, in the long term. I think that in the U.S. specifically, where there's still no regulation around full disclosure, as there are in other markets like Canada, you have to be fully disclosed. I think that we're kind of starting to see some self-policing going on, right? Where if people are introducing a new product that's got a big proprietary blend, you're even seeing the customers now kind of call it out because it's, the brands that are doing the right thing have kind of made it the cool thing to do is to be transparent.
I just had one other question too, was artificial sweeteners right now. Are you seeing, I guess, more so your own customers looking for that? And if so, how are you kind of answering to that question?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where everything's going to kill you. And what I tell my internal team and what I tell a lot of our fans is that if I go down because I had some sucralose in my diet, then I did not live a full enough life. But with that being said, we are seeing more questions about not so much artificial sweeteners as much as we are natural and artificial colors. And our stance is simple. We're not necessarily a natural brand. However, anytime and place that we can go natural, whether it's the colors, achievable via natural color, or the flavor system, the desired flavor, right, is achievable via a natural flavor system or a sweetener, we're going to do that. But we're not going to sacrifice kind of the end product or the desired product to kind of go natural. And that's just what's right for our brand. I think there's other brands out there that kind of cater to hey, the natural raw organics of the world. But that's just kind of the balancing act and choice that we've made.
Yeah, to kind of zoom out a little bit on that one, I mean, with consumable CPG as a whole, I mean, taste is usually one of the biggest purchase criteria, and unfortunately a lot of people just don't like the taste of stevia at this point from the sweetener standpoint. So though there's been a lot that's kind of come full circle and a lot of different innovation in terms of like herbicides and different things like that, it's still very much bitter taste for a lot of people, especially in sports nutrition when you're also trying to combat bitterness or other type of ingredients in the base as a whole. So you're seeing this across like all of the consumable CPG categories where they're struggling to try to understand that consumers do want natural things, but they're also not willing to sacrifice taste to get that. So it's a matter of a balancing act. To Dan's point around the brand, like what does your brand stand for? With the color standpoint, he's working with licensed partners that have specific colors they need to hit, be that Sour Patch Kids or Sonic or something like that, where they want it to be authentic to the candy or the drink that you get. So they can't really use a lot of the natural colors. But for the 99.9% of the industry as a whole, all of the colors either don't really need to be in there or they can be substituted through some natural thing, and it's not going to really affect anything too much. The sweetener thing is still kind of tough at this point, I think, for consumers, because it's still very much, they want to have a good experience with taste. If they, especially with sports nutrition brands, like you want people to use the product more because they're going to reach their goals. That's your, that's your aspirational part of building a sports nutrition brand, is obviously to help people get healthier. And if they're not using the product because they don't like the taste, then it's actually hurting it more than helping it. So you kind of have to balance that best you can.
Yeah, you have to, at the end of the day, one of the most important things I can leave you with is that a brand cannot be everything to everybody. It's impossible, right? You're never going to make everybody happy. And so you have to kind of figure out what balancing of all of this, right? Of the good ideas, the bad ideas, the naturals, the artificials, the controlled distributions, the US versus the global. You have to, put that together and figure out what works for your brand and stay super true to that and super authentic to that. And I truly believe in the long run that will win out. I think that authenticity and whatever message that you choose and road you choose, as long as you're kind of steadfast in sharing why you're choosing that, I think that's going to win out. Really, really interesting. I was interviewing a new team member maybe about 3-4 months ago, and I learned a term for the first time, which was the pink tax. And I actually had never heard it before. It really kind of stood out for me, which, the pink tax is essentially the thinking or just the practice of women's products costing more and delivering less. And I know like one of the famous examples of that is kind of the Gillette women's razor type of phenomena. And I truly believe, unfortunately, in sports nutrition or functional and in supplements, this couldn't be more true as well. A lot of times you see products that are packaged in pink, or pastel tones, and it's branded as a women's pre-workout. And what's the difference between, this product and let's say a product designed for men by the same brand? It's a couple milligrams of caffeine. I mean, caffeine and stimulant tolerance has nothing really to do with gender. It's nothing to do with gender. So I think that for a long time, women have kind of been exploited in the business, and I think that you're starting to see some of this change where, and something that Ghost is actually we're planning for 2020 is, not necessarily women's products, but unisex products that are fully dosed, fully efficacious, and competitively priced with anything else in the line. I think that, whether you're making something like greens or vegan proteins or collagens, again, sometimes they've been more, I think, marketed towards women. They're great for any gender, and I think that my advice to brands, and I guess my personal perspective, is that they should just be marketed as such, as great products for the benefits that you're creating them for, and great for men or women.
Yeah, I think the term that's used in the industry a lot is like pink it and shrink it, I think is the term.
Pink it and shrink it.
Yeah, it's kind of how it goes. But I mean, I have a whole video on YouTube about the pink tax actually, because I've always found it very interesting. I think the economics brain in me has market segmentation and fragmentation creates inefficient markets in a way, and a lot of times that's why you can charge more for things. So it's, from a capitalist perspective, it's great, but it's also not great from a consumer and long-term standpoint. A lot of things that we talked about in our presentation. So it's a matter of no longer kind of thinking about things and trying to take advantage of situations, but thinking about how do you present this in a way that's going to be inclusive for everybody. And women's supplements as a whole is probably one of, if not, one of the most major kind of categories for opportunity, I believe. And it's a matter of who's going to present itself in the right way and actually get female consumers to understand that it's for them, but it's not necessarily presented to them in a way that's like so obvious and so diluted that that they're not going to be continuously kind of purchasing it. And I think that people are going to have to flip their brains. A lot of retailers are also kind of no longer want to work with retail or work with brands. One specifically, Boxed, an e-commerce platform that's against like Amazon, competing against Amazon. They specifically will no longer work with consumer brands that have pink tax associated with it because they don't believe it's going to be there. They don't want to support those types of brands. So you have to price those aligned with it, regardless if it costs you a couple extra pennies to make a pink razor over a black razor or whatever. They want it priced in line, or you're not going to do business with them.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help support me, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on this video. If this is the first time you've been introduced to my videos, would love for you guys to be a part of my community by subscribing to my channel. I upload several videos just like this weekly, and if you guys want to connect further outside of this platform, I do include all of my social media links down below. I just want to thank you guys again for your time. Hopefully I gave you some value in return, and we'll see you guys on the next video.